This week, Cabinet met on the 20th of January, that being last Tuesday. And coming out of that Cabinet meeting, the head of the Presidential Secretariat and Secretary to the Cabinet, Dr. Roger Luncheon, will bring you highlights on a number of matters Cabinet wishes to bring to the public's attention through you, the media, after which we will entertain questions today only on Dr. Luncheon's opening statement. And I will now ask Dr. Luncheon to proceed with his opening presentation for this morning.
Thank you, Kwame, and good morning again, ladies and gentlemen of the media. I should note the post-cabinet press briefing occurring on Friday instead of commonly on Wednesday, the day after, and to recognize the schedule, the very busy schedule that has contributed to the lack of availability of the Cabinet Secretary on Wednesday and on Thursday of this week, and also has contributed to our decision not to extend today's press briefing beyond questions addressed, matters addressed in my opening statement. A temporary situation we anticipate that will be soon corrected. At the Cabinet meeting on January the 20th, 2015, the following matters have been selected for yours and the public's attention. 1, the President's announcement and Cabinet's resolve. 2, fuel prices and the implications of the reduction. 3, the Interfaith Harmony Week, the 2015 celebration, and then snippets. Grant aid, the People's Republic of China, and then the diplomatic roundup. Allow me to start with the President's announcement. President Ramotar announced on the Tuesday, January the 20th, that May the 11th, 2015 would be polling date for the promised general and regional elections in Guyana. The announcement was made after Cabinet on Tuesday afternoon, and Cabinet members anticipated the timing, and this was, of course, their anticipation was, of course, related to the President's earlier commitment from as early as in December of 2014 that there would be such an announcement imminently. For the cabinet members, the announcement had quite a number of significance, quite a number of implications. And one that came to mind immediately was that the 110 odd days that awaited the cabinet members until the date, the polling date, that period would be one of intense campaign activities, particularly by cabinet members who would form an important component of the governing party, the People's Progressive Party Civic, the re-election campaign. In essence, cabinet members recognize their responsibility and their contributions in the context of the bigger parties' undertaking for the campaign, but their specific contributions to that activity. It was to that end that the cabinet members embraced the necessary resort to the committed campaign activities and all that commitment implied. Most important would be their efforts that would underpin the focus on returning the People's Progressive Party Civic to government. Members resolved to aggressively pursue an election campaign that would pronounce on the party's vision and the future of Guyana, as would be laid out in the manifesto that ought to be made available prior to the polling date. Additionally, the focus of the cabinet members in their contribution to the re-election bid would be their exploitation of the track record of prior PPPC administrations in 92, in 97, 201, 206, and 2011. The feeling was that this track record would contribute significantly to the successes of the re-election campaign. The delivery of free and fair and free from fear elections would also be highlighted in the efforts or during the efforts of the cabinet members. Cabinet members undertook to be part of the PPPC electoral machinery that was be dedicated to acquainting the Guyanese electorate with the merits of the PPPC both party and government, and equally with the disadvantages of the alternative, the opposition parties, and all alternatives to the current PPPC administration, the cabinet members undertook to critically examine during the campaign. Fuel prices, the implication of the recent reduction at the pump. The implementation of the Tuesday, the 20th of January decision by Cabinet to adopt the recommendation of Minister Dr. Ashni Singh on fuel prices. That decision has already started to have the expected results. Fuel prices at the pump of the state-owned gas station, that's Guy Oil, and those affiliated with Guy Oil, those fuel prices have fallen by hundreds of dollars per gallon. Consumers are thus paying less since January the 20th for gasoline, for diesel, and for kerosene. Minister Dr. Singh did point out at Cabinet that those price changes at the pump were expected to generate pressure on the non-state-owned wholesalers and retailers of fuel and fuel products to react appropriately to the prices at Guy Oil. The minister additionally pointed out that cooking gas prices, aviation gas, and aviation fuel were not the subject of monitoring and regulation by the state to the same extent as kerosene, dieseline, and gasoline fuel products. And as such, the impact of the decision that led to the decreases in fuel and fuel product prices might not necessarily lead to decreases in the price of aviation fuel products and, importantly, cooking gas. The feeling was that the private sector would, on the basis of market forces, respond appropriately where these products are concerned to those decreases in prices that were occurring in the other elements of the fuel industry, the domestic fuel industry. The Interfaith Harmony Week. As you would know, the General Assembly of the United Nations had appointed this date in February to promote among the religious faiths of the world harmony. The 2015 activity that would be supported fully by the administration, the main event would be the February the 2nd, that is Monday, February the 2nd, GICC, the Guyana, and at the Liliendal site, the center, a program that would be hosted by the Inter-Religious Organization of Guyana, the IRO. They have been doing this, and this is a continuation of the IRO's work in Guyana. And at this 2015 activity, they would be expecting, they would be offering feature addresses by eminent personalities, and high among whom would be the president and other ministers of the government. The cabinet conceded the importance of the event by offering the use of the conference center free of cost to the organizers. The theme of the 2015 event would be love of God and love of the neighbors. Love of God and love of the neighbors. Guyana Police Force and Grant Aid, People's Republic of China. Cabinet, at its meeting of the 20th of January 2015, confirmed the grant of 40 million Guyana dollars by the government of the People's Republic of China to Guyana specifically for the procurement of equipment for the Guyana Police Force. The grant of 40 million Guyana dollars to Guyana specifically for the procurement of equipment for the Guyana Police Force. That support cabinet directed would be programmed by Minister Rohi, the Minister of Home Affairs, who would essentially be responsible for the preparation and the submission to Cabinet for its approval of the uses of that 40 million Guyana dollars grant by the Chinese government. Lastly, diplomatic roundup. Cabinet at its January the 20th 2015 meeting approved the grant of its agreement for the appointment, and this is for the state of Kuwait, His Excellency Ayudan M. Ayasaidi. Ayudan M. Ayasaidi. His Excellency would be the non-resident ambassador extraordinaire and the plenipotentiary of the state of Kuwait to the Republic of Guyana. As the non-resident ambassador, the appointed plenipotentiary would be resident in Brazil. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the matters I wanted to bring to your attention. As I indicated, the schedule of the Cabinet Secretary at this particular point is rather onerous, and time is essentially not in our favor today to conduct the usual cabinet, post-cabinet press briefing, and I would like for us to restrict questions and clarifications, requests for clarifications, to my opening statement. Thank you.
Sir, Adam Harris, Prime News. Fuel prices. What has the government examined the fact that electricity costs should also go down, given that the fuel imported by GPL is subject to the same acquisition costs, the same influences? So when could people expect to see a lowering, perhaps by 30% of the electricity bills?
You know, I would want to hesitate to pronounce authoritatively on that subject, but I would provide some insight as to if and how the understandable concern that you have raised may or may not be addressed. Because it seems logical, prices for fuel have fallen significantly, and therefore fuel-based products would be expected to have their prices fall also. Perhaps in the real world, this may be so, but we have to understand that GPL is a peculiar creature. GPL is a peculiar creature. And indeed, the actual cost of production of electricity that is borne by consumers really does not have that much to do with the cost of fuel, precisely because of the subsidy that the government provides. In essence, if they were in some neutral situation where there was a flow through from prices of fuel to the prices we all paid for electricity, tariffs would be off the map. And indeed, one would welcome decreases, but we would be decreasing from a price dictated by fuel prices only. Whereas today, the prices for electricity, the tariff for electricity, is a combination both of price of fuel, we cannot ignore that, but substantially a result of subsidies. significant subsidies, billions of dollars worth of subsidies annually, subsidies whose removal, you might recall, led to that infamous July the 18th, 2012 activity in Linden in Region 10. So price increases, nonetheless, one can understand if electricity prices were to remain the same, allowing perhaps the subsidy to be reduced.
Dr. Luncheon, that is about it. Sir, would you see whether there are any plans by the administration for Parliament to be convened for the dissolution? And second, sir, if you permit, is what would the government like to see be the message by the Islamic community at the interfaith activity in light of what is happening around the world?
Your first question, there couldn't conceivably be, at this stage in the electoral calendar, the naming of the date for elections for some mysterious sort of occurrence of returning to the days of the 10th Parliament. I think it would be more reasonable, it would be consistent with logic for us to be contemplating the date of dissolution of the 10th Parliament and the President's announcement of that date. I don't believe that with the fervor behind having elections and the date set, a step such as reconstituting or to returning to the 10th Parliament could ever be understood, will ever be understood by the average Guyanese, or for that matter, for any thinking person. I do believe I can speak for reasonable Guyanese by concluding that the 10th Parliament is history. With regards to the IRO hosted event and the nature of the nature of a possible government's, how you might say, influence on the line taken by the Islamic community in Guyana, specifically with regards to the theme, love God and love thy neighbor. I think, to be honest, to be fair, it probably would be a departure, really, from the government's and its recognition that state and religion are and should remain separate. And in essence, the activities, whether it's the Hindus or the Christians or the Muslims in the Guyanese society, and the way in which they interact, whilst of significance to Guyana, and hence to the administration, does not necessarily lead to the government insisting, proposing, or even influencing the nature of that engagement. Essentially, the way that the adherence to the three main faiths in Guyana, the way in which over the centuries of their presence here in Guyana has evolved. And I must remark, the appreciation of all of us, not only the administration, not only the adherents of any one faith, but the adherents of the entire religious community about the way in which relationships among the three faiths and adherents of the three faiths, the way those relationships have evolved, indeed makes me feel that you really don't need government overt hand in influencing that. The Guyanese people, the adherents of the three faiths, have by their very independent action determined the relationship, a relationship that we commend to the rest of the world among the faiths of Guyana.
You mentioned earlier that the significance and the implications of the president's announcement was considered by
Cabinet. Mm-hmm.
What were the considerations given to Budget 2015 and the CSEC exams, CSEC and CAPE exams on the same day?
Yes. The date of May the 15th, May the 11th, I didn't change the date. I just misspoke. The date of May the 11th indeed created some, not necessarily concern, but it did arouse questions. Well, what about budget? What about access to public funding for government agencies, budget agencies, for the period until the 11th Parliament? And as you noted in your question, the conflict that was immediately apparent between the date, May the 11th, for polling, and the very same date for CXC examinations at what we would have to concede the polling places that are otherwise educational establishments where examinations are held, and in this case, where CSEC and other examinations will be held in 2015. I will deal with the first one to advise that ongoing preparations for the 2015 budget continues. Ongoing preparation for the 2015 budget continue. There is not any significant reason why the budget for the year 2015 would not be, as is usual, prepared. What would obviously be different is that the budget and its presentation to the 11th Parliament would, of course, be subsequent to the conclusion of the general and regional elections and the installation of the executive that succeeds in this 2015 general and regional elections. So there will be a budget. The budget is being prepared, but it will not, or it will be, as is usual, presented to the Parliament And we understand that to mean the 11th Parliament of Guyana. With regards to the conflict, this is what, on the surface, it seems, and I'm certain that considerable discussions would take place, if not already are taking place, between the involved stakeholders. That is the administration, particularly the Office of the President, where the date of 11th of May was chosen after the consultations with the Elections Commission, with the Ministry of Education responsible for the preparation, responsible for the conduct of these examinations, and of course with CSEC, because as a regional examination, as you would know, on any one day, the very same subject is examined in all of the contributing, participating states in CARICOM. So what is on the surface is the use of educational establishments as polling places on May the 11th, and the very same polling places, educational establishments being used by Guyanese students for the CSEC examination. Again, I would say, these discourses, these necessary discourses among stakeholders are actually going on, but will, over the 3 months lead time. I don't want us to minimize the significance of the 110 days. We are not gripped with a decision that has to be made in 1 day, 1 week, 1 hour. We do have some time to entertain the examination, the careful examination of options, and to bring to bear the results on what specifically to do on May the 11th.
That's not a quick follow-up to the same issue. There are also concerns that you have some students who write in Cape are of voting age, as well as the invigilators would be voting. They would be disenfranchised to some extent if they're busy with these exams and not being able to go to polling stations. There's also that concern.
Yes, but I want to believe that we are not dealing with a novel situation. I don't remember, maybe Adam could remind us, when we did examinations. But were we over 18 when we were, I don't know.
We had 4 to 21.
Then notice, yeah. But the kids are voting, they finish in Cape and thing at 17 and 18. My children, 16-year-old, they don't do the CXC and all them running the Cape. So I don't know. It is not a novel situation. So I wouldn't pretend I have anything to contribute to the, well, if it is a dilemma that parents and voting children have to address. But maybe the polls open at 6, so you could run in there quick and vote and still go to your exam. Or you could finish the paper quick and then go and vote. I don't know. Maybe some of you are young enough to remember in 2011 or in 2006 what you did.
Yes, Johnson, you ready for you indicated you wanted to answer?
Dr. Luncheon, Samuel's Wednesday. Was there a history of fear and sometimes violence during the election period? With the upcoming IRO Harmony Week event that's coming up, can you tell us what role do you think this event can play in terms of minimizing some level of fear and stuff like that?
Yes. I probably have to ad-lib. The nexus, as I listen to you, obviously exists, because I don't believe the General Assembly, in its proposal and its promotion of harmony, saw the February event in isolation of all the other months of the year. In other words, I would have assumed that indeed the message that comes from harmony among the faiths of the world now, because this is a General Assembly resolution, the harmony would extend not only throughout the world, but for the duration of the year 2015. And there is no doubt about it that elections in Guyana, general elections, as well as in other countries, have been a source of tension, heightened tension, and in some instances has even evolved to violence, violence among political parties, violence among ethnic communities supporting different factions in the electoral struggles, violence among religious parties and religious communities. And therefore, I would tend to see your point that indeed there is an appeal the week of harmony among the adherents of the faith, the major faiths of Guyana. The lesson of harmony not being totally dissipated in that February week or month, but indeed extending for the duration of 2015, and particularly on that historic date of May the 11th, or going to be historic date of May the 11th, 2015. My feeling in answering Dennis's question, if there were to be a significant contribution by central government in that event, it may very well be along those lines to promote harmony, not only, not exclusively to this period that we are celebrating in February, but for the whole year, with emphasis on May the 11th, a day when tensions generally rise and threats to harmony are easily generated, frequently encountered.
Somebody, you are? Oh, it looks like a disguised version. Okay, yeah, go ahead, sorry. Go ahead, please, sorry.
I have my hands up on it and you refuse to look at me. Larry takes with it, sir. Could you tell us what kind of impact those wave taxes on the gas is going to likely to have on the economy?
Well, I would say this because the minister was questioned about this, because it did seem a bit incongruous that the fuel prices and the reduction at the pump were at the same time related, at the same time occurring when the excise tax was being increased. Now, in the real world, generally when prices go up, when taxes go up, everybody expects prices to go up. But in this situation where for decades now, the People Progressive Party Civic Administration has been using changes in excise tax to cushion the impact of the flow-through of world prices on domestic prices, you could understand now why to make prices at the pump lower, it doesn't necessarily mean increasing the excise tax would contradict or would prevent that. As the Minister, Dr. Singh, pointed out, an increase in the excise tax on a world price that is high may very well be much less or more, for that matter, than an increase on a world price that is lower. For instance, a 10% increase on a $500 per gallon compared to a 200% increase on a $40 gallon would give you some appreciation the need to delink an automatic relationship between excise tax increases and what you can get. In essence, sometimes you could raise the excise tax when the price is high and get just as much as you could get with a significant increase where a lower price is concerned. So what we're facing now is an unusual decrease in world prices. World prices taking a beating, if I might say so, where fuel prices, world fuel prices are concerned. So if the government were to continue tax revenue receipt, if the government were to continue tax revenue receipt, the excise tax logically would have to increase as the acquisition price, the world price, goes down. That would have to happen. And the cushioning effect would then be on the retail prices in Guyana. So we are seeking to maintain tax revenue by increasing the excise tax, but the excise tax is applied to a decrease, significant decreases in acquisition prices, world prices.
Marcel, question shall culminate the questioning segment for today. Go ahead.
Dr. spent a lot of time emphasizing cabinet members' commitment to this election and all of that. I would hate to think that their members were not committed, but my question is specifically, what are the pledges by cabinet members, and are you hinting or saying that last elections the results were kind of based on the fact that you didn't have the support from the cabinet members?
Yes. I can read between the lines. I can read between the lines.
Saying generally, they didn't
yes.
in 2008.
Yeah. But I hope that I did not convey that impression, and that the resolve of this cabinet, and let's be realistic, who is different in the 2011 cabinet from the 2015 cabinet? Edgehill, yes. One Edgehill. I like your alliteration there. One is here. Yeah. So on that basis alone, they almost roll over. I don't see that being of major significance. I think if you were to ask me, I would be saying that the resolve is more a reflection of the fighting spirit, that indeed, I think I said this at a historic occasion when allegedly the AFC incited that incident in Agricola, when I said we were ready to rumble. So I want to believe, at least listening to our comrades at that meeting, when the indication of the president to make that announcement, and the colleagues, they did the mathematics quickly. They said we have 100 and something days. And this is where we got to show our wares, establish our credentials, and contribute to the electoral campaign of the governing PPP.